It was one of those Friday nights where exhaustion hit different. Rebecca had been staring at spreadsheets for the past 12 hours and her eyes felt like sandpaper. The office building was mostly empty now. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional footsteps of the security guard making his rounds. She finally packed up her things at 9:30, way past her usual time. The marketing campaign deadline had everyone working overtime, but she didn't mind too much. She actually loved her job at Sterling Industries, even though she'd only been there for 6 months. It was her first real position after years of freelancing and odd jobs, and she wanted to prove herself. The subway ride home was a blur. Rebecca leaned her head against the cool window, watching the tunnel lights flash by in rhythmic patterns. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was probably Alex, the guy she'd been seeing for the past few weeks. They'd met through a mutual friend and things were casual but fun. Nothing serious yet, just enjoying each other's company. When she finally got home to her tiny studio apartment, she kicked off her heels and fell face first onto her bed. Her phone buzzed again. This time she checked it. "You make it home safe?" Alex had texted. She smiled and typed back a quick yes. They had this little routine going. Every night they'd send each other voice notes to say goodnight. It started as a joke because Alex said her sleepy voice was cute, and now it had become their thing. Nothing too serious, just playful and sweet. Rebecca was too tired to type much, so she opened her voice message app. She didn't even turn on the lights, just lay there in the darkness with her phone screen illuminating her face. "Hey," she whispered into the phone, trying not to sound as exhausted as she felt. "Just got home. Today was so long I thought it would never end." She paused, then added with a playful tone, "Good night, Daddy. Sweet dreams." It was their little inside joke. She knew it sounded silly, but that was kind of the point. They'd laugh about it later. She hit send and tossed her phone onto the nightstand, not even bothering to change out of her work clothes. Sleep pulled her under within minutes. Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through her curtains way too early. Rebecca groaned and reached for her phone, squinting at the brightness of the screen. She had a few notifications. One from her mom asking about Sunday dinner, one from her best friend Zoe with a meme, and then she saw it. Her heart dropped into her stomach. The voice note. The one she'd sent last night. It wasn't in her chat with Alex, it was in her chat with Daniel Sterling. Daniel Sterling, as in the CEO of Sterling Industries, as in her boss's boss's boss, as in the man who terrified everyone in the building just by walking past them. "No, no, 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 no," Rebecca whispered, sitting bolt upright in bed. Her hands were shaking as she stared at the screen. The message showed as delivered and read. It had been read at 11:42 last night. She felt like she might throw up. How did this even happen? She scrolled frantically through her contacts. Then she realized she'd messaged Mr. Sterling earlier in the week about a project update. His name was saved as Daniel Sterling in her phone. Alex's name was saved as Alex Dan because his last name was Daniel. Her phone's recent contacts must have pulled up the wrong one. And in her exhausted state, she hadn't even noticed. She'd just sent her CEO a flirty goodnight voice note calling him Daddy. Rebecca wanted to disappear. She wanted to pack her bags and move to another country. She wanted to invent a time machine and go back 12 hours and slap the phone out of her own hand, but there was something worse than the message being read. There was a reply. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Part of her didn't want to know. Maybe she could just quit via email and never show her face in that building again. But curiosity and dread made her tap the voice note. The sound of Daniel Sterling's voice filled her quiet apartment. That deep, measured voice that she'd only heard in company meetings and presentations. "I think you have the wrong person, Miss Carter," he said. There was a pause, and she could swear she heard the tiniest hint of amusement in his tone. "But for what it's worth, good night to you too. Sleep well." Rebecca played it again, and then a third time. He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound disgusted. He almost sounded nice. Was that possible? Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she typed out an apology. She deleted it. Typed it again. Deleted it. Finally, she just recorded another voice note because her hands were shaking too much to type coherently. "Mr. Sterling, I am so incredibly sorry. That message was meant for someone else, obviously. I was exhausted and not paying attention, and I'm mortified. Please know that was completely unprofessional, and it will never happen again. I'm so sorry." She hit send before she could overthink it more. The next 3 hours were torture. Rebecca paced her apartment, checked her phone every 30 seconds, and contemplated every bad decision she'd ever made that led to this moment. She cleaned her entire kitchen. She reorganized her closet. She did anything to keep her mind busy. Finally, her phone buzzed. Another voice note from Daniel Sterling. "Miss Carter, please don't worry about it. These things happen, especially after long workdays. I appreciate your apology, but it's really not necessary. Let's just pretend it never occurred. I'll see you Monday." His tone was so casual, so kind. It didn't match the intimidating figure she'd seen walking through the office hallways. Everyone said Daniel Sterling was brilliant but cold. That he never smiled. That he once fired someone for being 2 minutes late to a meeting. Maybe those were just rumors. Rebecca wanted to believe this was the end of it. That come Monday morning, everything would go back to normal and this embarrassing incident would fade into a funny story she'd tell her friends someday. But Sunday night, lying in bed and dreading the sunrise, she had a sinking feeling that nothing was going to be normal anymore. She'd crossed some invisible line, and even though Mr. Sterling had been gracious about it, she couldn't shake the anxiety crawling under her skin. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined walking into the office and everyone somehow knowing what happened. She imagined HR calling her in. She imagined having to sit through meetings while avoiding eye contact with the CEO. Monday morning came too fast. Rebecca changed her outfit 4 times, trying to find something professional, but not like she was trying too hard. She left for work early, hoping to slip into her desk before too many people arrived. The office was quiet when she got there. She made herself a coffee in the break room, hands still a bit unsteady. As she walked back to her desk, she noticed something sitting there that hadn't been there Friday. A coffee cup from her favorite cafe down the street. The expensive one she only treated herself to occasionally, and it was still warm. There was a small note tucked under the cup. Rebecca picked it up with trembling fingers. "Thought you might need this after the weekend. Don't worry about Friday. We're good." It wasn't signed, but she recognized the handwriting from company documents she'd seen. Daniel Sterling had brought her coffee. Her exact order. Caramel macchiato with an extra shot and oat milk. How did he even know her coffee order? Rebecca sank into her desk chair, staring at the cup like it might explode. This wasn't how she thought today would go. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a tiny voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this mistake was about to change everything. Rebecca spent the entire morning trying to act normal, which of course made her act completely weird. She typed the same email 3 times because she kept zoning out. Her coworker Lisa asked if she was okay twice before lunch, and Rebecca just blamed it on not sleeping well. The coffee sat on her desk, half finished. Every time she took a sip, she thought about the fact that Daniel Sterling had personally delivered it. The CEO of a company with over 300 employees had taken time out of his morning to bring her coffee. It didn't make sense. She kept her head down, focusing on the campaign mock-ups that were due by end of day. The marketing department was buzzing with the usual Monday chaos, which helped her blend in. Nobody seemed to know about the voice note incident, thank goodness. She wanted to keep it that way. Around 2 in the afternoon, her phone pinged with a calendar notification. There was a meeting she didn't remember scheduling. It just said project review in conference room B starting in 15 minutes. Rebecca frowned at her screen. She clicked on the meeting details. Her stomach flipped when she saw who had sent the invite. Daniel Sterling. Her hands went cold. This was it. He was going to fire her privately. The coffee was just a nice gesture before he let her go. She'd heard about executives doing that, being kind right before they destroyed your career. She grabbed her laptop and notebook, trying to keep her breathing steady as she walked to conference room B. The hallways felt longer than usual. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, each step feeling like a countdown. When she opened the conference room door, Daniel was already there. He sat at the head of the table looking at his laptop. He was younger than most CEOs she'd seen, probably mid-30s with dark hair that was slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. He wore a navy suit but had taken off the jacket. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. He looked up when she entered and actually smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one, but it softened his whole face. "Miss Carter, thanks for coming. Please sit." Rebecca sat down 3 chairs away from him, putting her laptop on the table like a shield. "I wanted to talk to you about the campaign you've been working on," he said. turning his laptop screen toward her. The spring product launch. I've been reviewing the proposals from your team. Wait, this was actually about work? Oh, Rebecca said, trying to keep the surprise out of her voice. Of course. What would you like to know? For the next 20 minutes, they talked about marketing strategies and target demographics. Daniel asked her opinion on everything. He wanted to know her thoughts on the social media approach, the influencer partnerships, the budget allocation. He didn't just nod along either. He actually listened, took notes, asked follow-up questions. Rebecca found herself relaxing. When she talked about work, about ideas and creativity, she forgot to be nervous. She'd always been good at this part. It's why she loved marketing in the first place. I really like your approach, Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. It's different from what the senior team proposed, fresher, more authentic. Thank you, Rebecca said, feeling a genuine smile cross her face for the first time all day. I'd like you to lead the social media component of this campaign, he continued. I know you're junior level, but I think you've got the right instincts for this. Rebecca blinked. Really? That's a huge opportunity. You've earned it. I've been watching your work since you started here. The words hung in the air between them. Rebecca's mind raced. He'd been watching her work? For 6 months? I didn't realize you paid attention to the junior staff, she said carefully. Daniel's expression shifted slightly, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. I pay attention to good work regardless of who does it. You're talented, Miss Carter. Don't sell yourself short. They wrapped up the meeting and Rebecca walked back to her desk feeling like she was floating. A lead role on a major campaign. This was the kind of break people waited years for. But as the week went on, she started noticing other things, small things that didn't quite add up. Daniel would appear in the marketing department more often than he used to, at least more often than anyone remembered seeing him there. He'd stop by different desks, ask questions, check in on projects, but somehow he always ended up near Rebecca's workspace. On Wednesday, she was staying late to finish the campaign timeline. Most of the office had cleared out by 7. She was so focused on her screen that she didn't hear anyone approach until a voice spoke right behind her. You're here late. Rebecca jumped, nearly knocking over her coffee. Daniel stood there holding a folder, looking amused at her reaction. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you, he said. I'm just grabbing some files from the printer. It's okay, Rebecca said, hand over her racing heart. I'm just finishing up the timeline for the spring campaign. Mind if I take a look? He pulled up a chair and sat next to her. Not across the desk like a boss would, but right beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something subtle and expensive. They went through the timeline together. Daniel pointed out a few areas that might need more budget, suggested some connections he had with media outlets. The conversation flowed easily, and Rebecca found herself laughing at a joke he made about their competitor's terrible Super Bowl ad. You know, Daniel said after a while, I have to admit something. Rebecca's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. He's going to bring up the voice note. The coffee I brought you Monday morning, he continued. I actually knew your order because I overheard you talking about it a few months ago. You were telling your coworker about that cafe and how their caramel macchiato was worth the price. Rebecca stared at him. You remembered that? From months ago? He looked almost embarrassed. I have a weird memory for details. Always have. It's helpful in business, but probably a little creepy in situations like this. It's not creepy, Rebecca said softly. It's actually really thoughtful. Their eyes met and something passed between them. A moment of recognition, of possibility. Daniel was the first to look away. I should let you get back to work, he said, standing up. But Rebecca? It was the first time he'd used her first name. It sounded different coming from him, yes? That voice note from Friday, he said, and her heart stopped. It made me smile. I haven't smiled like that in a long time, so thank you for that, even if it was an accident. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her sitting there with her mouth slightly open. Over the next 2 weeks, the dynamic between them shifted in ways Rebecca couldn't quite name. They'd end up staying late at the office at the same time, which led to more conversations. She learned that Daniel wasn't cold at all. He was just lonely. Being CEO meant everyone treated him differently, kept him at a distance. He couldn't joke around with employees or grab drinks after work. He was always on, always being watched. Don't you have friends outside of work? Rebecca asked one evening as they shared takeout in his office. I did, Daniel said. picking at his Kung Pao chicken. But when you work 80 hours a week, friendships fade. People get tired of canceled plans and unreturned calls. That sounds really hard. He shrugged. It's the choice I made. Building this company from the ground up meant sacrificing a normal life. Most days it feels worth it. Some days, he trailed off, staring at nothing. Some days it doesn't. Rebecca finished for him. Yeah. She wanted to reach across the desk and take his hand, but she didn't. There was a line there, invisible but present. He was still her boss. This was still complicated. But as Rebecca drove home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Daniel had looked at her when she laughed. The way he listened when she talked, like every word mattered. The way this accidental voice note had somehow cracked open a door she didn't even know existed. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Alex asking if she wanted to hang out this weekend. She stared at the message and realized she hadn't thought about Alex in days, hadn't missed their goodnight voice notes. Her mind had been completely occupied by someone else, someone she definitely shouldn't be thinking about this way. Rebecca deleted the text draft she'd started and drove home in silence, knowing that whatever was happening between her and Daniel Sterling was about to get a lot more complicated. Things changed on a Thursday morning and March. Rebecca arrived at work to find people whispering in clusters around the coffee machine. The kind of whispers that stop abruptly when you walk past. She felt eyes following her as she made her way to her desk, and her stomach twisted with anxiety. Lisa, her co-worker, rushed over before Rebecca could even set down her bag. Have you heard? Lisa whispered urgently. Heard what? Someone reported you and Mr. Sterling to HR. They're saying there's something inappropriate going on between you two. The floor seemed to tilt under Rebecca's feet. What? That's insane. Nothing's happened between us. I know, Lisa said quickly. But you've been seen leaving his office late at night, having private meetings, and apparently, someone saw him bring you coffee that first Monday. We've been working on the campaign together. That's literally it. But even as Rebecca said the words, she knew how it looked. The late nights, the private conversations, the way they'd both started smiling more around each other. Nothing had actually happened, but the connection between them was real. Anyone paying attention could see it. HR wants to see you at 10, Lisa said quietly. I'm sorry, Rebecca. This is so unfair. The next 2 hours crawled by. Rebecca couldn't focus on anything. Her hands shook every time she tried to type. At 9:55, she walked to the HR office on the 3rd floor, feeling like she was heading to her own execution. Patricia Chen, the head of HR, was waiting with a folder and a sympathetic expression that somehow made everything worse. Rebecca, thank you for coming. Please sit down. Rebecca sat, gripping the armrests of the chair. I want you to know this is just a preliminary conversation, Patricia said. We received an anonymous complaint about potential inappropriate conduct between you and Mr. Sterling. I'm required to investigate any such claims. Nothing inappropriate has happened, Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice steady. We've been working together on the spring campaign. That's all. But you have been spending considerable time alone with him, meeting in his office after hours? Because we're working on a major project. He asked me to lead the social media component. Of course we've had meetings. Patricia made notes on her legal pad. I understand. However, perception matters in these situations. Several employees have noticed what they interpret as special treatment. The coffee delivery, the private meetings, being given a lead role despite your junior status. I got that role because I earned it, Rebecca said, heat rising in her chest. My work speaks for itself. I'm not questioning your abilities, Patricia said gently. But you must understand how this looks from the outside. A young female employee and the CEO spending unusual amounts of time together. People talk. Rebecca felt tears prickling behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. So I'm being punished for doing good work? For being professional? No one's being punished. We just need to ensure proper boundaries are maintained. I'll be speaking with Mr. Sterling as well. The meeting ended with Patricia saying she'd be in touch. Rebecca walked back to her desk feeling numb. Around her, people quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in their computer screens. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Locked in a stall, she let herself break down for exactly 3 minutes. Then she washed her face, fixed her makeup, and went back to work. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her fall apart. But the worst part came that afternoon. Daniel walked past her desk without stopping. Without even looking at her. His face was completely blank, that cold CEO expression back in place. He'd been called to HR too, obviously, and now he was doing exactly what he had to do, cutting her off completely. Over the next week, it got worse. Daniel stopped coming to the marketing department. Their scheduled meetings were canceled. When they passed each other in hallways, he'd nod politely like she was just another employee. Like they hadn't shared takeout and life stories. Like he hadn't told her about his loneliness. The campaign continued, but now Rebecca reported to the marketing director instead of working directly with Daniel. The magic had been sucked out of the project. Everything felt hollow. The office gossip intensified. Rebecca heard the whispers, saw the looks. Some people thought she'd slept her way into the lead role. Others said Daniel was taking advantage of a young employee. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter when rumors got started. Her best friend Zoe came over one night and found Rebecca stress-eating ice cream on her couch. "This is ridiculous," Zoe said. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Doesn't matter," Rebecca mumbled through a mouthful of chocolate chip cookie dough. "My reputation is destroyed. Everyone thinks I'm either a manipulator or a victim. What does Daniel say about all this? Nothing. He won't talk to me. He's completely shut me out." Zoe grabbed the ice cream container. "Okay, I'm cutting you off. Listen to me. If he's willing to throw you under the bus to protect himself, then he's not worth it anyway." Rebecca knew Zoe was right. But it didn't stop the hurt. 2 weeks after the HR complaint, things got even more complicated. Rebecca was working late, trying to avoid going home to her empty apartment. When Lisa appeared at her desk looking uncomfortable, "You should probably see this," Lisa said, turning her phone around. It was a news article. The headline read, "Tech CEO Daniel Sterling reunites with former fiancée Victoria Chen." Rebecca's heart sank as she scrolled through the article. There were photos of Daniel at some charity gala with a stunning woman in a red dress. Victoria Chen, a venture capitalist. The article mentioned they'd been engaged 3 years ago, but called it off due to career pressures. Now apparently they were giving it another try. "I'm sorry," Lisa said softly. "I thought you should know." Rebecca stared at the photo. Daniel was smiling in it, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was his public smile, the one he wore for cameras and board meetings. Not the real one she'd seen in his office over Chinese takeout. She closed the article and went back to work, refusing to let herself think about it. But that night, lying in bed, she couldn't stop the thoughts from coming. Maybe this was for the best. Maybe the universe was telling her that whatever had been developing between them was never meant to happen. He was a CEO with a complicated life and an ex-fiancée. She was a junior employee trying to build a career. They were from different worlds. The next morning, Rebecca made a decision. She requested a meeting with Patricia in HR. "I'd like to transfer to a different department," Rebecca said. "Or if that's not possible, I'll start looking for opportunities at other companies." Patricia looked surprised. "Rebecca, that seems extreme. The investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing. You're not required to leave. I know, but I can't work here anymore. Not like this. Everyone looks at me differently now. And I can't—" She stopped herself before saying too much. "I just think it's better if I move on. If you're certain I can put out some feelers, you're a talented employee. I'm sure we can find something suitable." Rebecca nodded, feeling both relieved and heartbroken. This job had meant everything to her 6 months ago. Now it felt like a prison. That afternoon, she got called into a meeting with the director of digital marketing at another company. Apparently, Patricia had worked fast. The position was better than her current one, with a higher salary and more responsibility. They wanted someone who understood social media strategy and brand storytelling. The interview went well. Really well. By the end of it, they were basically offering her the job pending final approval. "We'd love to have you start in 3 weeks, the director said. "Does that work with your current notice period?" Rebecca agreed and walked out of the building feeling like she could finally breathe again. She drafted her resignation letter that night. 2 weeks' notice, professional and courteous. She didn't mention Daniel or the rumors or any of it. Just thanked Sterling Industries for the opportunity and said she was pursuing a new direction in her career. She planned to submit it first thing Monday morning, but Friday afternoon, something happened that changed everything. Rebecca was packing up her desk early, ready to escape for the weekend, When her computer pinged with a calendar invitation, she almost deleted it without looking, but something made her check. It was from Daniel. A meeting request for Monday morning. Just the two of them. The subject line simply said, "Please." Rebecca stared at the screen, her cursor hovering over the decline button. She should say no. She should submit her resignation and move on with her life. Getting pulled back into whatever this was would only hurt more. But that single word in the subject line got to her. Please. She'd never heard Daniel Sterling say please. Not like that. Not like he was asking instead of commanding. Against her better judgment, Rebecca clicked accept. She had no idea what he wanted to say, but she'd give him one last chance to explain. After that, she was done. Monday couldn't come fast enough, and yet Rebecca dreaded it with everything in her. Rebecca barely slept Sunday night. She kept rehearsing what she'd say to Daniel in her head. She'd be professional, calm, detached. She'd listen to whatever he had to say, then hand him her resignation letter and walk out with her dignity intact. That was the plan anyway. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Rebecca chose a black blazer and pants, armor for whatever was coming. She got to the office early, before most people arrived. The building felt different in the quiet morning hours, less hostile somehow. At 8:55, she walked to Daniel's office. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. His door was slightly open. She knocked anyway. "Come in," his voice called out. Daniel stood by the window looking out at the city skyline. He turned when she entered, and Rebecca was struck by how tired he looked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually neat hair was messier than normal, like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "Please sit." Rebecca sat in one of the chairs across from his desk, but didn't take off her coat. She wanted him to know she wasn't staying long. Daniel didn't sit. He paced instead, which was so unlike his usual composed demeanor that Rebecca felt her carefully constructed walls crack just a little. "I owe you an explanation," he started. "And an apology, a massive one." Rebecca stayed silent, waiting. "When HR called me in about the complaint, they made it very clear that any continued personal interaction with you could be seen as an abuse of power. They suggested I maintain complete professional distance until the investigation concluded." He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "I handled it terribly. I should have explained that to you. Instead, I just shut you out." "You did," Rebecca said, her voice colder than she intended. "I thought I was protecting you. If I distanced myself, the rumors would die down and your reputation would recover. But I see now that I made it worse. People filled in the gaps with their own stories." He sat down finally across from her. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. You deserved better than that." Rebecca wanted to stay angry, but his genuine remorse was making it difficult. "Who filed the complaint?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's actually the other thing I need to tell you. We found out who it was. Do you know Richard Brennan from the senior marketing team?" Rebecca nodded. Richard was the senior strategist who'd been with the company for 8 years. He'd pitched for the lead role on the spring campaign and been passed over. "Richard filed the complaint," Daniel continued. "Not because he was concerned about ethics or workplace conduct. He was angry that you got the position he wanted. He thought if he could create enough controversy around you, we'd have to remove you from the project and he'd get the role." Rebecca felt heat rising in her chest. "Are you serious?" "Completely. HR did a thorough investigation. They tracked the anonymous submission back to his computer. When confronted, he admitted it." Daniel leaned forward. "He's been terminated. And I made sure HR documented that the investigation found no evidence of any inappropriate relationship between us." "Well, that's great," Rebecca said, but her voice was flat. "My name is cleared, but the damage is already done. People will always remember the rumors." "I know," Daniel said softly, "and I take full responsibility for that. I should have handled this differently from the start." They sat in silence for a moment. The rain picked up outside, drumming against the windows. "I saw the article," Rebecca said finally, "about you and Victoria." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "That wasn't what it looked like." "Really?" "Because it looked like you moved on pretty quickly. Victoria showed up at a charity event I couldn't get out of. The photographers assumed we were back together. We're not." He ran a hand through his hair. "She wants to try again, but I told her no. I told her I'm interested in someone else." Rebecca's heart skipped, but she forced herself to stay composed. That's your business. It's not just my business when the person I'm interested in is you. The words hung in the air between them. Rebecca had imagined him saying something like this, but now that it was happening, she didn't know how to respond. Daniel, she said carefully, you're my boss. Even if we wanted something to happen, it can't. You said it yourself, it would be an abuse of power. You're right. Which is why I can't offer you anything while you work here. It wouldn't be fair to you or your career. He pulled out a folder from his desk. Patricia told me you're looking to transfer or leave the company. Rebecca's stomach sank. So that's what this was. He was letting her go gracefully. I got an offer from another company, she said, reaching into her bag for the resignation letter she'd printed. I was planning to give you this today anyway. She slid the letter across his desk. Daniel picked it up but didn't open it. I don't want you to go, he said, but I understand why you need to. And honestly, if leaving here means we could eventually explore this thing between us without the power dynamic, then maybe it's the right move. Rebecca stared at him. You're saying you want me to leave so we can date? No, Daniel said quickly. I'm saying I want you to do what's best for your career. If you got an offer somewhere else, you should take it if it's a good opportunity. What happens between us after that is separate. I'm not asking you to leave for me. I'm asking you to put yourself first. That's a convenient distinction, Rebecca said, but there was no bite in her words. Is the offer good? Better than what you have here? It's better, actually. More money, more responsibility, a company with a great reputation. Then you should take it. Daniel stood and walked around the desk. He leaned against it, closer to her now. And after you've settled in, after some time has passed and you're not my employee anymore, maybe we could get coffee. As equals. No power dynamic, no office politics. Just two people getting to know each other. Rebecca looked up at him. And what if whatever this is between us doesn't survive the real world? Outside of late-night work sessions and office drama? Then at least we'll know. But Rebecca, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that voice note. And not because of what you said, but because it made me realize how much I'd been noticing you before that. How much I looked forward to seeing you in meetings. How your ideas always stood out. You made me remember what it feels like to connect with someone. Rebecca felt her resolve crumbling. She'd spent weeks building walls around her heart, and he was dismantling them with brutal honesty. I'm scared, she admitted. This whole situation has been so messy and public. What if we try and it doesn't work? What if I leave here and we date for 2 months and then it falls apart? I'll have left a job for nothing. You're not leaving for nothing. You're leaving for a better position at a better company. What happens with us is just a possibility, not a guarantee. He moved closer and she could smell that familiar cologne. But I think it's a possibility worth exploring. Don't you? Rebecca stood up, needing to create some distance to think clearly. She walked to the window, watching the rain blur the city below. I'm supposed to start the new job in 3 weeks, she said. That's good. It gives us time to do this right. She turned to face him. You really think this could work? You're a CEO. I'm just starting my career. We're in completely different places in life. I don't care about any of that, Daniel said. I care that you make me laugh. That you challenge my ideas. That you see me as a person, not just a title. He smiled slightly. And I care that you accidentally called me daddy and somehow made it the best part of my year. Rebecca couldn't help it. She laughed. The tension broke, and suddenly the whole absurd situation seemed less heavy. This is crazy, she said. Completely, Daniel agreed. But maybe crazy is exactly what we both need. Rebecca took a deep breath. She thought about the past few weeks, the pain and confusion and sleepless nights. But she also thought about the late-night conversations, the way Daniel really listened when she talked. The connection she'd felt from the very beginning. Okay, she said finally. I'll take the new job. And after I'm settled, after some time has passed, we can try coffee. As equals. Daniel's face broke into a genuine smile, the real one she'd seen in his office over takeout. I'll count the days. But we're doing this the right way, Rebecca said firmly. No shortcuts, no secret meetings. Clean slate. Agreed. She gathered her things and headed for the door. Before she left, she turned back. For what it's worth, that voice note was supposed to be playful and silly. I never expected it to change my entire life. Best accident ever, Daniel said. Rebecca smiled and walked out, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. She had 2 weeks left at Sterling Industries, A new job waiting and the promise of possibility, with someone who'd started as a mortifying mistake. Sometimes the wrong message sent to the wrong person turned out to be exactly right. Rebecca's last 2 weeks at Sterling Industries passed in a strange blur. Once word got out that Richard had been fired for filing a false HR complaint, the atmosphere around her shifted completely. People who'd been whispering behind her back suddenly wanted to apologize. Lisa brought her coffee every morning as a gesture of solidarity. Even Patricia from HR pulled her aside to say she was sorry for what Rebecca had gone through. But the best moment came during her last week. The company held an all-hands meeting, and Daniel stood at the front of the room addressing everyone. Rebecca sat in the back, trying to be invisible. "I want to address something that's been circulating through our office," Daniel said, his voice carrying that CEO authority she'd heard in her first weeks at the company. "There have been rumors about inappropriate conduct involving one of our employees. I want to make it clear that a thorough investigation found zero evidence of any wrongdoing." Room was completely silent. What did happen was that a talented employee was targeted by someone who felt threatened by her abilities. That person is no longer with this company, but the damage to her reputation was real and it was unfair. He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "We're supposed to be a team here. We're supposed to support each other's success, not tear each other down. I expect better from everyone going forward." Rebecca felt tears prickling her eyes. He didn't say her name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. He'd just publicly cleared her reputation in front of the entire company. After the meeting ended, a few people came up to her. Some apologized. Others thanked her for her work on the spring campaign. It didn't erase everything that had happened, but it helped. On her last day, Rebecca cleaned out her desk and said goodbye to the marketing team. They'd organized a small goodbye lunch, which was sweet considering everything. Lisa hugged her tight. "You better keep in touch," Lisa said, "and tell me all about the new job." "I will," Rebecca promised. She saved Daniel for last. She went to his office at 5, after most people had left for the weekend. His door was open and he was signing papers at his desk. He looked up when she knocked. "Hey," he said softly. "Last day." "Last day," she confirmed, stepping inside. "I wanted to say thank you for what you said at the all-hands meeting. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. You deserve to leave with your reputation intact." He stood and came around the desk. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous, excited, terrified." She laughed. "All of it. You're going to be amazing at the new place. They're lucky to have you." They stood there for a moment, and Rebecca realized this was goodbye, at least for now. The next time they saw each other, it would be different. No office, no power dynamic, no complications. Just two people trying to figure out if what they felt was real. "So," Rebecca said, "I guess I'll see you around." "Definitely," Daniel smiled. "Give me a call once you're settled in. No pressure, no timeline. Just whenever you're ready." Rebecca nodded and turned to leave, but at the door she stopped and looked back. "Hey, Daniel." "Yeah?" That voice note really was meant for someone else, but I'm kinda glad I sent it to you instead. His smile grew wider. "Me too." The new job started on a Monday in early April. The offices were modern and bright with an open floor plan and a coffee bar that served actually good coffee. Rebecca's new boss, Jennifer, was warm and enthusiastic, and the team welcomed her immediately. The first week was overwhelming in the best way. There was so much to learn, new systems to master, new people to meet, but Rebecca loved it. She was given real responsibility right from the start.
They valued her ideas.
Nobody looked at her with suspicion or whispered behind her back. By the end of her first month, she'd already led 2 successful campaigns and earned a compliment from the CEO in a company-wide email. She felt like herself again. Actually, she felt like a better version of herself. One evening, after a particularly good day at work, Rebecca sat on her couch with a glass of wine and finally let herself think about Daniel. She'd been so focused on proving herself at the new job that she'd barely had time to miss him. But now, in the quiet of her apartment, she realized she did miss him. The conversations, the way he listened, the connection they'd had. She picked up her phone and stared at his contact. They'd texted a few times over the past month, just casual check-ins. Nothing heavy, but maybe it was time. Before she could overthink it, she typed out a message. "Hey, I think I'm ready for that coffee." His response came within minutes. "Tomorrow? There's a place near your new office. I'll send you the address." Rebecca smiled at her phone. Tomorrow works. She barely slept that night. She changed her outfit 4 times the next morning before settling on jeans and a nice sweater. Casual but put together, she wanted to look like herself, not like she was trying too hard. The coffee shop was small and tucked away on a side street, the kind of place locals loved but tourists never found. Daniel was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. "I ordered your usual," he said as she sat down. "Caramel macchiato with an extra shot of oat milk." "Unless your order changed?" "Still the same," Rebecca said, touched that he remembered. "Some things don't change. Some things do, though," Daniel said. "You look happy. Different than when I last saw you?" "I am happy. The new job is incredible. I actually got promoted already, can you believe that? They made me senior digital strategist. I can absolutely believe that. You're brilliant at what you do." They talked for 2 hours, about work and life and everything in between. Without the office politics hanging over them, the conversation flowed easily. Rebecca found herself laughing more than she had in months. Daniel told her about changes at Sterling Industries, about how the spring campaign she'd worked on had been their most successful launch in years. "They miss you there," he admitted. "The marketing team isn't the same without you." "I miss some parts of it," Rebecca said. "But leaving was the right choice. I know. Doesn't mean I don't wish things could have been different." The coffee shop started closing around them, the barista wiping down tables. They'd been so absorbed in conversation that they hadn't noticed the time. Outside, the spring evening was warm and pleasant. They walked slowly, neither wanting the night to end. "So," Daniel said, "was this okay? The coffee?" "It was perfect," Rebecca said honestly. "Can we do it again? Maybe dinner next time?" "I'd like that." They stood on the corner where they'd eventually go separate directions. Daniel looked at her with an expression that made her heart skip. "I know we're taking this slow," he said, "but I want you to know this feels right." "You feel right." "It does feel right," Rebecca agreed. "Scary, but right." The best things usually are. Over the next 3 months, they fell into a rhythm. Dinner dates that turned into long walks through the city. Weekend coffee that became trips to museums and bookstores. They took their time, learning each other outside of conference rooms and deadlines. Rebecca met Daniel's sister and her family. Daniel came to a work event at her company and charmed everyone. They had their first real fight about something stupid, worked through it, and came out stronger. One Saturday morning, Rebecca woke up in her apartment to find a voice note waiting on her phone. From Daniel. Her heart jumped as she pressed play. "Good morning," his voice said, warm and slightly raspy with sleep. "I was thinking about that first voice note you sent me. The one that started all of this. I never told you, but I've saved it. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I listen to it and remember that the best things in life happen by accident." There was a pause, and she could hear him smiling. "Anyway, I hope you slept well. I'll pick you up at noon for brunch. And Rebecca? You can call me whatever you want." Rebecca laughed out loud, her face heating up at the memory of that mortifying night. She recorded her own voice note in response. "You are absolutely ridiculous for saving that, but also kind of sweet." She paused, feeling bold. "Good morning to you too. See you at noon. And Daniel? I'm really glad I sent that message to the wrong person." She hit send and got out of bed, feeling lighter than air. 6 months after leaving Sterling Industries, Rebecca stood at her bathroom mirror getting ready for a date. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Running 5 minutes late. Traffic is terrible. Miss you already." She smiled at the message. This man, who used to terrify everyone in his office, now sent her text saying he missed her after being apart for a few hours. Her phone buzzed again. Another voice note. She pressed play. "Hey, beautiful. I know I'm late, but I wanted to tell you something. I love you. I've been wanting to say it for weeks, but I wanted to get it right. So here it is. I love you, Rebecca. Not because of some accidental voice note, but because of who you are. See you soon." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. Happy tears spilled down her cheeks as she played the message again. She recorded her response with shaking hands. "I love you too. Now hurry up and get here so I can say it to your face." As she waited for him to arrive, Rebecca thought about that exhausted Friday night all those months ago. How she'd been so tired she'd accidentally sent the most embarrassing message to her CEO. How it had turned her entire life upside down. Best mistake she ever made. When the doorbell rang, She opened it to find Daniel standing there with flowers and that real smile she loved so much. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she replied, and pulled him inside. Some wrong messages lead to exactly the right place.